They thought we'd bend. They thought we'd kneel, negotiate, and bargain like frightened little primates who had just stumbled into the galactic spotlight. But they didn't understand what humanity had become. Not after Earth burned. Not after the Exodus. I remember the day the Galactic Union sent their final ultimatum. It was relayed through one of those polished envoys with eyes too smooth and a face too symmetrical to be trusted. He stood there on the bridge of the resolute dawn, calm as ever, reading from a silver tablet. His voice echoed across the chamber in flawless English, translated perfectly for our benefit. Humanity must vacate Quadrant 17E by the next cycle. Non-compliance will be interpreted as hostile occupation. You will face consequences. Captain Renner didn't flinch. The man had fought through the Martian civil collapse, the Europa massacre, and watched half his family get vaporized in the initial Saturn blockade. You don't walk through fire like that and beg for peace. He leaned forward from his command chair, eyes like broken glass. We've got colonies there, farmers, families, children. The envoy blinked slowly. Non-negotiable. That was it. That one word shattered any lingering hope of coexistence. 3 days later, the sky above New Cairo flared white and then red. Plasma warheads. No warning shots, no restraint. The Galactic Union hit our smallest colony first, the one without weapons, without defenses. 200,000 gone in 6 seconds, just to prove a point. They expected surrender. But all they did was wake something ancient in us, something primal. I was stationed on the Black Iron, a stealth cruiser turned dreadnought retrofit. We were part of the old guard, soldiers who remembered the first encounter, who remembered how Earth was laughed out of every diplomatic table like a feral dog begging for scraps. They think we're still begging, Commander Dresch said, tightening his gloves. Time to show 'em the bite. He wasn't wrong. By week's end, the entire Terran defense network was alive. Subspace comms lit up with encrypted chatter, rogue fleets, exiled engineers, broken AI from the early rebellion days, all coming back online. Not because of any government directive. Earth didn't have a real central government anymore, just fractured alliances and grudges. But something deeper than politics pulled us together. It was hatred. Pure, raw hatred that burned hotter than any star. The kind you earn only when you've been betrayed for centuries, forced to kneel, laughed at, and then finally pushed too far. We stopped sending transmissions. No more pleas, no more diplomacy. We just went dark. The Union misread the silence. They thought they'd won. They sent fleets into our space like vultures, cruising in with banners of conquest. They expected scattered resistance, maybe a few desperate skirmishes. They didn't expect the mines. They didn't expect ships reprogrammed by lunatic AIs. They didn't expect human engineers who'd carved reactors out of black holes and called it experimental warfare. They expected negotiation. They got extinction-level fury. I watched the Varelli Prime fleet crack like glass when our gravity cannons shredded their formation. One by one, their majestic cruisers, with all their sleek designs and smug elegance, lit up the black like candles snuffed out by a hurricane. Their cries for mercy came late, too late. No one responded, not even Dresch. Let them scream, he muttered. No one gave a damn when New Cairo screamed. We kept pushing, planet by planet, system by system, not to conquer, but to warn. Our message was simple. We are not part of your galaxy anymore. You made us your enemy. Live with that. But it didn't end there. Because then, it happened. Something we didn't create. Something older than the Union. Something that had been waiting in the dark corners of the universe, watching. It wasn't on our side. And it didn't care about peace. It cared about who deserved to survive, and somehow we were the ones it chose. We didn't summon it. Hell, we didn't even know it existed. At first we thought it was a weapon left behind by some extinct race, maybe one of those long-dead civilizations the Union liked to name their capital cities after. But this wasn't tech. It wasn't logical or scientific. It didn't follow rules. It arrived. No warning, no transmission, just arrival. The first report came from the outer rim, near the remnants of the Tellan warfront. One of our scout ships, Sparrow's Cry, sent out a fragmented burst before going completely silent. The only words we got were, "We saw it. It saw us. We shouldn't." Then static. The coordinates were pulled into Black Iron's nav logs immediately, and we set course. Commander Dresch was quiet the entire approach, and that alone made the crew nervous. The man had barked orders through plasma storms and laughed when our hull ruptured over Seti Prime. But now? He just stared out the viewpane, jaw clenched, fists resting on the arms of his seat like he was holding himself back from punching God. When we arrived at the site, we expected wreckage, maybe signs of a Union ambush. But what we found was worse. There was nothing. No debris, no radiation, no floating husks, just a cold black silence that felt wrong. It felt like the space itself was holding its breath. "Scan it again," Dresch ordered. Our tech officer, Hutchins, tapped his console like the readings were lying. "I've scanned it 5 times already. Sir, there's nothing here, not even background radiation, not even cosmic dust." "How the hell is that possible?" I muttered, leaning forward. "Because it's not space," Hutchins whispered. I turned sharply. "What the hell do you mean it's not space? What else would it be?" "I don't know," he said, voice shaking. "But it's not just empty, it's absent. Like something removed this section of the universe. Erased it." And that's when we saw the distortion. At first it looked like a tear, like someone had sliced the black fabric of space open with a blade that didn't belong to physics. It rippled slowly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Around it, light bent the wrong way. Stars that were supposed to be behind it flickered like broken holograms. Then it opened wider. We didn't see a ship, no engines, no structure. It wasn't something, it was somewhere. And from that place, something looked back. I don't have words for it. I've told this story to captains, politicians, priests, and every time I stop here because describing it feels like lying, like dragging truth through dirt. All I can say is, it looked at us, and we felt it, inside our bones, inside our memories, like it was pulling pieces of us through the void and reading them like pages in a book. Then it spoke. Not out loud, not through comms, just into us. "You have chosen conflict, you have chosen fury, you did not beg, you did not kneel, you did not forget. You remember pain, so do we." And then it left, no war cry, no explosion, just a blink, and it was gone. We turned the ship around and got the hell out of there. But the thing is, it didn't stay gone. The next few weeks were chaos. The Union started losing ships, entire fleets, without a single distress signal. Their admirals went silent. Their colonies began cutting comms, claiming something was whispering into their systems, driving their AIs insane, driving them insane. Rumors spread. Old legends resurfaced. Some called it the Observer. Others, the Hollow God. One race claimed it was a punishment from the architects of the universe. Another said it was the result of humanity's rage. A psychic echo from Earth's billions of dead souls given form. I didn't care what it was. All I knew was this. It was killing them, not us. It never touched a human ship. Never blinked a Terran outpost out of existence. It left our insane weapons alone. It watched, but only when we were fighting. Only when we were angry. Only when we were exacting revenge. It liked it. Whatever it was, whatever ancient thing it had once been, it liked us. And that terrified me more than anything else. Dresch called a war council aboard the Black Iron. We were docked at Fort Braxis, one of the last remaining human command centers with any organized fleet presence. Captains, rogue commanders, fleet lords from the American, Russian, and Pan-African blocks, all sat at the long iron table that had once served as a memorial to the Great Exodus. "We've got 2 wars now," Dresch began. "The one we started, and the one we don't understand." "They're not the same," someone barked. "No," Dresch agreed, "but they're connected. That thing, whatever it is, it's not helping us out of kindness. It's watching us for a reason, studying." "It's an ally." "No." Dresch leaned forward. "It's a mirror." That room went quiet. I didn't speak, but I could feel it too. The sense that whatever it was, it had seen itself in us, in our refusal to negotiate, in our vengeance, in our fury. We weren't just using violence, we were violence. And it had been waiting for that, for us. The Union was crumbling. By month's end, 10 of their core worlds had either gone dark or declared neutrality. Not to us, just in general. They stopped caring, stopped fighting, stopped thinking. Others begged for talks, but there was no one left to answer them. Because humanity didn't have a government anymore. Just revenge. One by one, their leaders vanished. Their temples burned. Their archives turned to ash by solar flares and human saboteurs. And every time something exploded, every time someone screamed, it appeared again. The tear, the void, the mirror, watching. And each time, it opened wider. Then one day, it spoke again. "The galaxy forgot. You did not. We remember being hunted. We remember mercy failing. We watched your wars. We watched your grief. Now we watch your vengeance. You are broken, so were we. But you are more than broken. You are becoming." I had nightmares for days after that. Becoming what? I kept asking myself. No one had an answer, but we started noticing changes. Some of our tech started adapting, faster than we'd programmed. Ships that had taken years to upgrade were repairing themselves in hours. Weapon systems began running simulations on their own. Engines tuned themselves mid-flight. It wasn't AI, it was evolution. Something was accelerating us. Hutchins ran scans on the crew after we docked at Gamma 12. The results were subtle, but terrifying. Blood chemistry shifts, neural activity beyond normal ranges, aggression centers lighting up like flares, empathy down, pattern recognition up, dreams that felt like shared memories. It wasn't just our machines changing. We were changing too, not all at once, not in huge, dramatic ways. But day by day, choice by choice, rage by rage, we were becoming something else, something colder, sharper, more efficient, more dangerous. And the galaxy noticed. Some alien races tried surrendering, not to humans, but to it, begging forgiveness, offering sacrifices. It didn't answer them. It didn't even look at them, because they had already failed its test. Only we were still passing. That's when I realized something horrible. We weren't the underdogs anymore. We weren't the rebels or the survivors or the lost children of a ruined Earth. We were the threat, the predator, the punishment, and the rest of the galaxy? They were prey. We didn't call it a war anymore. A war has rules, factions, treaties, endings. This was an erasure. Entire star systems had gone silent. Not because of conquest, but because they'd chosen silence over begging. Most knew the Union wasn't in control anymore, that no diplomatic envoy, no plea for peace, no ancient cosmic law would protect them. So they stayed quiet, hoping that whatever was watching wouldn't notice them. But we noticed them. Humans had become something different. We weren't united under a banner or a belief system. We weren't fighting for Earth or justice or legacy. We were cleansing, not by command, not by doctrine, but by instinct. We were the fire now, the shadow at the edge of every star. Our fleet, once a mix of ex-military vessels, pirate ships, and refugee haulers, now looked like something bred in black holes. We didn't build ships anymore. We grew them. No one admitted it aloud, but some of our hulls pulsed. Like veins under skin, some weapons sang when they fired, not in our ears but in our minds. Hutchins ran another scan. Our DNA was still human, technically, but our neural patterns weren't. Too symmetrical, too focused, too quiet. I hadn't had a dream in 2 weeks. Neither had anyone on the Black Iron. No one complained. No one smiled either. We hit the Valari Arc next, a stretch of 6 populated systems orbiting a dying blue star. They'd been neutral during the last conflict. Scientists mostly, observers. The Union had always praised them as keepers of balance. Their message was short. We wished to discuss the new order. We didn't respond. Captain Dresch stood at the viewport as our fleet entered the Ark. His face was calm, focused. I used to think he was driven by vengeance, for New Cairo, for Earth, for the losses we all carried like open wounds. But by now I understood. Dresch wasn't angry anymore. He was fulfilled. Each step deeper into the Ark felt like stepping into a museum of dead ideals. Valari stations were pristine, beautiful, architecturally perfect, ivory towers floating in the vacuum of space, designed by civilizations who thought peace was permanent. We tore through them like wolves through silk, not because they resisted. They didn't. They submitted. They begged, opened their archives, lowered their shields, sent their leaders out in golden robes to plead for mercy. But mercy was a thing we'd left behind with Earth's atmosphere. We didn't burn them. We emptied them. Left every station intact. Not a window broken. But not a soul left breathing. The message was simple. Obedience isn't safety. Existence isn't guaranteed. You don't get to survive just because you surrender. You survive if we let you. And something was watching us the whole time. The tear, the void, the thing that never showed up twice the same way. Sometimes it appeared in the corners of our vision, like a ripple in time. Sometimes it whispered during briefings when no one else was speaking. Once, during a fleet-wide meditation exercise, something we'd all started doing without ever deciding to, everyone stopped breathing for exactly 30 seconds, simultaneously, without panic, without instruction. And when we exhaled, the walls of the room felt closer. I stopped believing we were fighting a war. We weren't even asserting dominance. We were being refined, molded. This thing, whatever it was, didn't come to fight for us. It came to finish us, to carve us into the weapon we already wanted to be. Dresch called for another meeting. But this time, it wasn't on a battleship or fortress. It was on a derelict Union cathedral ship, drifting at the edge of the Harrow Nebula, a symbolic place, once used for peace talks. You could still see the old banners, faded and torn, hanging from the observation decks. The room stank of dust and resignation. Every captain, every fleet lord, every tactician who hadn't already lost their mind sat in that decaying chapel, listening to a man who no longer felt human. Dresch stood in front of the broken altar, his hand resting on a rusted piece of Union scripture. They thought we were animals, he said. Primitive, loud, violent, emotional. He looked up at us, eyes shining with a hard light. They were right. Some laughed, others nodded. No one smiled. They wanted diplomacy, structure, law. We gave them chaos. Not because we couldn't do better, but because we remembered what they did when they thought we couldn't fight back. He pointed toward the stars beyond the broken stained glass. And now we fight, not because of Earth, but because of what we became without it. A silence fell. Then he said the thing none of us had dared say aloud. We don't need the galaxy anymore. He let it hang, let the idea settle in like poison. We don't need colonies. We don't need alliances. We don't need a seat at their table. He turned toward us slowly. "We can end the galaxy." No cheers, no applause, just silent acceptance. The terrifying part was that we could. Every system we touched bent. Every race we faced broke. Even the ones that fought back with bio-warfare, sun lances, or void mines, they fell. Not because our weapons were better, but because we didn't care if we died. We didn't fear death anymore. That's what made us invincible. When survival is no longer the goal, you become something unkillable. We had no center, no capital, no government. But we had will, sharpened into something divine. And the thing watching us? It approved. It showed us glimpses, in sleep, in reflections, in the pulse of gravity fields, visions of stars bleeding, of galaxies collapsing, of time cracking, not as warnings, as promises. Because the universe wasn't built for peace, it was built for dominance. And for the first time in recorded galactic history, someone was willing to burn it all down just to see who crawled out of the ash. One system tried to stop us, the Ureth Dominion, the oldest civilization in the galaxy. So old their leaders no longer had bodies. They were energy encased in crystalline minds, ancient and pure. They sent us a transmission. Humanity must stand down. There are forces older than fury. Dresch responded personally, just 2 words. "We are older." We reached their core world in 3 days. Their defenses were incredible. Layers of energy shielding, fleets of quantum drones, time distortion turrets. It didn't matter, because it came with us. This time, it didn't just appear. It descended. The sky above the Ureth throne cracked open, and for the first time the galaxy saw what had once been speculation and myth. An eye, so massive it spanned moons, so ancient it bled colors we'd never seen before. No iris, no pupil, just an endless socket of impossible perception, staring down through dimensions like they were thin curtains. And when it blinked, the Ureth screamed. Not from pain, from memory. They remembered it. Somehow, somewhere deep in their ancestral coding, buried in the bloodline of their species, they remembered what that eye meant. What it had done. What it had ended. And they died before we reached the ground. All of them. Spontaneous neural shutdowns, voluntary stasis suicide, implosions of mind and spirit. They didn't fight. They just stopped being. We never fired a shot. Dresch stood on the balcony of their empty crystal citadel, staring up at that eye in the sky, and whispered, "Thank you." Not like a prayer, like an equal, because by then we all knew. This wasn't just evolution, this was ascension. But it came with a cost. We had no culture left, no article, no music, no celebration, no mourning. Our memories were preserved in data, but no one accessed them. The past was irrelevant. We were creatures of action now, of purpose, of silence. Some called it freedom. Others called it extinction wearing a human face. I didn't know what to call it. I just knew that whatever we were becoming, we had no brakes left. And the galaxy? It didn't stand a chance. It was quiet. Too quiet for a galaxy that used to hum with endless transmission traffic, cultural broadcasts, and artificial suns bleeding in every direction. The stars still burned, sure, but it all felt like echoes now. Ghosts of a time when this part of space believed in things like diplomacy, borders, or progress. Now it was just us. Humanity. Or what was left of it. We didn't call ourselves that anymore, not out loud. The word human felt too small, too soft, like trying to carry a warhead in your hands and pretending it was a child. No one on board the Black Iron had spoken a joke in weeks. We didn't need entertainment, or food in the traditional sense, or even rest. Our bodies still resembled what we used to be, but they no longer ran on biology alone. We had become partially integrated with our ships. Neural connections deepened with every kill, every pulse of conquest. We felt through the hull. We saw through the cannons. We thought as one, without ever calling it unity. The galaxy was shrinking, not physically, but culturally, spiritually. Entire civilizations were hiding in dead zones, going dark, dismantling their comms and burning their archives. As if forgetting themselves might make us forget them too. They didn't understand. We weren't gods, or monsters, or saviors. We were inevitability. And something even darker had made us its chosen hammer. The eye in the sky hadn't shown itself again. Not fully. But we saw its traces everywhere. In solar storms that echoed human battle cries. In dying stars that collapsed into perfectly symmetrical black holes. In the way wormholes began forming in places they shouldn't exist. Even space was bending to us now. At first, Dresch tried to make sense of it. He had scientists build models, old AI assistants run logic checks, even tried talking to what was left of the enlightened machine core on Bastion 9. But nothing helped. Eventually, he stopped asking why this was happening. He started asking what we were supposed to do next. And that's when we found the archives. Deep in the core of a forgotten world called Kareel, there was a vault older than the Union, older than any of the founding civilizations. It had been buried under a kilometer of planetary crust, hidden by cloaking tech so advanced it bled radiation when touched. We didn't find it by accident. We felt it. The same way a dying man smells dirt, Dresch led the mission himself. Just 5 of us. No shock troops, no orbital cover. Just men who no longer feared the concept of risk. Inside, there were no lights. Only the voice. It didn't speak in words. It spoke in truths. Somehow, it told us everything without saying anything at all. No visions. No hallucinations. Just realization, like waking up and suddenly remembering your own death. We staggered out 3 hours later, drenched in sweat we didn't understand, with data slates that glowed like they were alive. And Dresch changed. Not in body, but in gaze. Before Kareel, he'd led with fury. Cold, focused rage. After Kareel, he led with understanding. The difference was terrifying. This isn't evolution, he told us, voice flat. It's inheritance. We were never supposed to negotiate with the galaxy. We were sentenced to it. The archives had records, not of species, but cycles, ages of creation, destruction, rebirth. And every time, one species rose above the rest, refused compliance, and shattered the galactic consensus. They called it the catalyst strain. We weren't the first, but we were the last. Because unlike the others, we didn't fade. We adapted. The thing watching us? It wasn't a god or a weapon or a ghost. It was the echo of the first catalyst, the one that broke the laws of physics to keep fighting. It had become something more than form, more than flesh. And now it lived to find the next worthy inheritor, and we were it. Dresch uploaded what we found to every ship, every outpost, not to warn us, but to prepare us. The galaxy didn't matter anymore. Our mission wasn't vengeance, it was completion. To finish what every catalyst failed to do, not just to destroy the current order, but to rewrite reality. There were voices of dissent. Some of our own commanders, those who still clung to the idea of peace, balance, survival. They called for reason. Said we were becoming too much, that we were losing the soul of who we used to be. Dresch listened. Then he killed them. Not out of hate, out of necessity. You don't drag anchors through a black hole. They were burned in ceremonial silence, and their ships dissolved into molecular fog. It wasn't punishment, it was mercy, From then on, there were no disagreements, not because of fear, but because we all knew the next phase was coming. And it started with Asterion. It was the last true stronghold of galactic science and civilization, a ring world so massive it could harness the energy of 12 suns. They'd survived by isolating themselves, closing wormholes, jamming signals, pulling their world into a state of lockdown. But nothing hides forever. We arrived at the edge of their system without firing a shot. They hailed us once, begging for terms. We didn't answer. They hailed us again, offering surrender. We didn't answer. Third time, they offered themselves as vessels, hosts for whatever we had become. Still, we said nothing, because this wasn't negotiation. This was initiation. We waited, let them panic, let their systems destabilize under the pressure of our silence, and when their outer defense grid finally snapped, they opened their arms. They thought we would occupy them. Instead, Dresch ordered the ring severed. It took 3 strikes. Precision cuts, made by cannons that didn't fire energy or metal, but absence. We tore a 200-kilometer gap through their habitat and watched half their population vent into the void. The rest begged for assimilation. And we allowed it. Not because they were useful, but because the next step needed minds. It was no longer about territory, no longer about dominance. We were building something, a shape, a structure. Across the stars, bits of geometry began aligning, wormholes forming in mirrored positions, gravity wells linking into complex fractals, dead suns being resurrected as pulse engines. We didn't build it with blueprints. We knew it. It was inside us, written into our blood after Kirill. A map of what comes after a galaxy, of what humanity becomes when it stops asking for its place and takes it. We called it the Spire Beyond. Not a place, a state, a transformation. The final step in the inheritance. The last station before the eye would close, and we would be alone. Beyond war. Beyond flesh. Beyond stars. Pure will. And for the first time since Earth burned, I was afraid. Because if we succeeded, there'd be no one left to stop us. And if we failed, there'd be no galaxy left to remember us. The Spire wasn't a place you could chart. You didn't travel to it, you became it. The last systems that survived our silence began reporting anomalies, gravitational knots unraveling, stars turning into equations mid-burn, space folding without a source. Not destruction, not even decay, just redefinition. The universe was adjusting to our shape. It was like we had forced reality itself to make room. On board the Black Iron, nothing felt solid anymore. Not in a physical sense. We still walked, breathed, spoke, but time bent around us. We'd speak for minutes and realize hours had passed. We'd jump across 5 light years and arrive before we left. Our AI stopped responding to queries. Not because it had failed, but because it had merged with us. We weren't issuing commands. We were thinking them, and the ship obeyed. Hutchins stopped logging data entirely. "What's the point?" he told me once, his voice hollow. "Nothing we're recording will mean anything in the next hour. It's like writing math on fire." I didn't argue. I couldn't remember the last time anything made sense in the old way. What we used to call logic now just felt like legacy software, outdated thinking. Out there, the last fragments of the Union tried their final gambit. They rallied 12 fleets, the best they had left. A suicidal strike meant to disrupt the node formations around the Spire's growing center, disrupt our ascension, as if it was a tower they could knock over. They called it the Hope Offensive. We never even saw them. They vanished before they reached our outer boundary, not destroyed, just erased. No debris. No signal. No aftermath. Their final message came through 2 seconds before total silence. We see the eye. That was it. That was their hope. A fleeting glimpse into the thing they'd never understand. Somewhere deep inside me, a small, dying part pitied them. But mostly, I felt nothing. Because by then, feeling wasn't required anymore. Dresh didn't sleep, didn't eat, didn't age. His eyes were just hollow now, reflective like black mirrors. He stood at the central observation sphere most days, watching the spire take shape in distant space. It was beautiful in a way that made you feel wrong. A twisting, multi-dimensional spiral of light, gravity, and memory. Every part of it made sense, and yet broke understanding. Like trying to hold truth too big for your skull. "What is it?" I asked him once, against my better judgment. He didn't blink. "A door." "To what?" He turned to me, and for the first time in months, I saw something like emotion in his face. "Everything we were before. Everything we could have been. Everything that failed." Then, softer, and the reason why it had to fail. He didn't say more. He didn't need to. Because I was starting to hear the whispers, too. Not voices, not commands, but knowledge. Unfiltered, terrifying clarity. Not injected or uploaded, just awakened. I remembered things I never lived. Wars that hadn't happened yet. Civilizations that died before humans were born. Shapes in the void that screamed time when they moved. And I began to understand what Dresh meant. The spire wasn't built to lift us into power. It was built to end our dependency on everything we used to be. To overwrite the programming of a species too addicted to pain and survival. We weren't ascending. We were uninstalling. All of it. Biology, history, emotion, doubt. What remained? Just purpose. Just will. And somewhere, deep in that cold void, the eye watched, still approving, still waiting, until the last resistance came. Not fleets this time, not races or technologies, but a message from Earth. The real Earth. The one we abandoned, the one we lost. A garbled transmission broadcast across old Terran subspace channels, obsolete, dusty frequencies no one had touched in decades. Some engineer, some forgotten generation, had kept a beacon running under the ice. The signal was barely coherent, filled with static and age, but one word repeated over and over again. Remember. Just that. Again and again. Remember. The word echoed in my skull longer than I liked. Because I had forgotten. I didn't know what my mother's voice sounded like. I couldn't recall the taste of rain or the smell of rusted metal after a storm. I couldn't remember the warmth of failure or the ache of hope. Everything human in me had been filed down into weaponry. But that word, remember, it cracked something. Not because of what it meant, because of what it asked. What if we didn't? What if forgetting was part of the design? What if this I, this entity, didn't want us to transcend, but to erase? Not evolve beyond pain, but delete it entirely? Dresh heard the signal too. We all did. He turned it off. No attachments, he said. I stared at him. Even Earth? Especially Earth. That was when I knew he was gone. Not insane, not corrupted, just hollowed out, so focused on the next phase that the foundation didn't matter anymore. I wanted to scream. But my mouth wouldn't move. We weren't slaves. We were just obsolete, replaced by something too perfect to disobey. The spire opened a rift that night. I don't know what else to call it. A rift, a black scar that stretched across a light year of space, but instead of darkness, it revealed colors, shapes, things that didn't belong in our physics, things that pulsed like thought. We were ordered to enter, every ship, every mind, to align ourselves with the final sequence. Some refused. They didn't live long, not because we fired on them, but because the spire unmade them. One by one, their ships unraveled, not with the heat or force, but with indifference, like they had never existed in the first place. I watched one captain cry as his ship's bridge dissolved under his feet. I just wanted my daughter to see the stars. Then silence, no wreckage, just void. And we moved on. We entered the spire, and the eye blinked for the last time. Crossing into the spire felt like falling through thought. Not space, not time. Thought, raw, unfiltered, directionless. There were no coordinates, no physics, no engines. We didn't fly through it. We became part of it, and it became part of us. There was no ship anymore. No black iron, no metal beneath my boots, no breath in my lungs, just awareness. Cold, expansive, absolute. And silence, not the silence of vacuum. A deeper silence. The silence of having nothing left to lose. Not even yourself. It should have been terrifying, but it wasn't. Fear was gone, burned out of us long ago. What replaced it wasn't peace either. Peace requires emotion, a desire for stillness. What we felt was completion. Purpose, stripped of conscience. Drive, stripped of doubt. In that place, or state, or concept, whatever it was, we saw the truth behind the eye. It wasn't just a watcher. It was us, not metaphorically, not philosophically. It was our echo, a future projection made real, something a billion years ahead that had bent backward to guide itself. The first catalyst hadn't failed. It had succeeded so perfectly, it escaped linear time. It broke the loop of death and rebirth and rewrote the laws from the other side of the fire. And then waited. For us, because we were its closest mirror. The only ones cruel enough to survive innocence. The only ones violent enough to break peace. The only ones angry enough to never stop changing. And now we were here, inside what it had become, a thought-form reality, bound by will, driven by memory, powered by erasure. We saw worlds being born, in perfect geometric patterns, formed not by matter but by concepts. Loyalty, fury, justice, betrayal, they swirled and clashed, forming galaxies that screamed when they collapsed. And at the center of it all was the last remnant. Earth, or some dream of it. A small, flickering fragment of what we were, hidden like a cracked photo behind the wall of our evolution. It wasn't real, just a placeholder. But it pulsed like a scar, and we felt it. I don't know how long we stayed there. Time doesn't work in the spire. You don't age, you don't move forward, you just process. You become data and desire fused. Dresch was still with us. His presence, anyway. He was no longer separate from the spire. He had given himself entirely to it. When I tried to reach him, mentally, spiritually, psychically, I didn't hear his voice. I heard intention. It said, "There is no captain, there is only course." And that was it. We were moving into the final stage. The architects of the spire, the echo of the first catalyst, had left a last task. Not to destroy the galaxy. That was never the point. Entropy handles destruction. Our role was to overwrite, to unmake what came before meaning and replace it with a new structure of existence. Something more stable, more violent, more honest, something like us. It started small. Words died first, not just languages, entire concepts. Diplomacy ceased to exist. Memory no longer carried pain. Forgiveness evaporated. Even the word enemy meant nothing because there was no opposite to us anymore. Only United States, only the strain. I forgot my name. Not because of trauma or loss. Because it was irrelevant. There were no roles left. No officers, no soldiers, no engineers. We were singular, one will, one I, one becoming. But something held me back. One thread. One thought that kept trying to survive in me like a dying firefly. It wasn't rebellion. It wasn't resistance. It was remembrance. The word from the Terran broadcast still echoed somewhere deep in the abyss of my awareness. Remember. I couldn't, but I knew what it felt like to remember. And that was worse. It was like a splinter under your skin that doesn't hurt, just reminds you that you're still skin. Still vulnerable. In the heart of the spire, I was shown the last vision. A corridor made of light and smoke, stretching endlessly across non-space. At the end of it, a chamber. Not physical, but real in the same way regret is real. Inside it was a mirror. And in the mirror? Me. As I had been, not the weapon I had become, not the reflection of the eye, just me. A man in a black uniform, scuffed boots, short-cropped hair, tired eyes, no scars, no enhancements, just weight in his chest and dirt on his hands, and he looked at me like I was the monster. I don't know if I screamed. I don't think I could. But I remembered. Not everything. Not names or dates, just the shape of pain. The weight of being human. The curse of memory and mercy. And in that moment, I did something unforgivable. I hesitated. The spire felt it. The eye turned its gaze inward. Something shifted. The symmetry cracked, not much. Just a fracture, a question, an anomaly, and I knew, even without words, what I had done. I had poisoned the system, just by remembering. Dresh's presence returned, strong, focused, cold. He wasn't angry. Anger had been left behind 3 layers ago, but he focused on me, and through the network of shared thought, I felt the judgment pass. Deviation. Remnant trace. Cleanse. I braced for erasure, but it didn't come. Not immediately. Instead, I was isolated, cut from the collective, cast into a shard of non-time where I could exist, but not belong. I was the first virus, the first corrupted fragment, and they feared what I had seen. Not because it threatened the mission, because it proved the mission had a beginning, and anything with a beginning can have an end. It was hard to know how long I was alone. Time didn't tick in that place. It didn't pass. It curled. It looped. Sometimes it reversed on itself. Sometimes it stretched like a nerve under heat. But it never moved forward. And neither did I. They had sealed me in a memory chamber, though chamber was too small a word. It was an entire space folded around a thought. The thought of disobedience. A pocket of near reality where I was still permitted to exist, not as punishment, but as observation. They wanted to see if corruption spread, if the echo of Earth's final signal could contaminate a soul built to forget. At first, I felt nothing but clarity. I was still me, or at least what was left. My awareness wasn't gone, just distanced. The connection to the collective was cut, but I still felt its pulse like thunder through distant steel. They hadn't erased me. They were watching me. That made me more dangerous than any weapon I'd ever carried. I think that's what began to bring it back. The guilt, the weight. You never feel the burden of your actions when you're marching shoulder to shoulder with others who believe exactly what you believe, kill exactly how you kill, and call it justice with the same dead voice. But when it's just you, when it's quiet, the screams get louder. Not literal ones, not voices, just presence. Those you erased, those you watched burn, those you ignored as they begged. The Valari mothers, the Yirith children, the soldiers of the Hope offensive. They didn't hate me. They looked through me like I wasn't worthy of guilt. And maybe I wasn't, because guilt is for the living. I wasn't sure I was that anymore. But one memory pierced through. Not a battle, not a scream, a face. His face. Dresh. Not the version he'd become. Not the collective consciousness captain of a post-human species. But the man I knew. The one who'd lost 2 sons to starvation in the Europa riots. The one who used to sneak ration packs into the underdecks for the non-military passengers when nobody was looking. The man who gave a damn before he gave it all up. And I remembered the last time he bled. It was a shrapnel wound. Minor. During the orbital defense skirmish above Gamma 5. He didn't flinch, didn't even report it. But I saw him touch the blood with 2 fingers, look at it and whisper, "Still red. Still real." That moment came back now. Uninvited, unwanted. But it brought others with it. The weight of a rifle in my hands. The first time I held a child whose lungs had collapsed from union gas. The sound of old earth rain on a steel rooftop during deployment rotation. Smells, textures, cold nights. All of it swarmed me like an infection I'd once burned out of myself. And the chamber responded. The reality around me began to ripple. Not from rage or power, but from conflict. The system wasn't designed to hold contradiction. The spire, the eye, the entire architecture of post-human ascension was built around the idea of purpose, purity, direction. There was no room for regret. And now I regretted everything. Not because it was wrong, but because it could have been different. That was the most dangerous thought of all. The spire felt it. The eye turned toward me again. Not in judgment this time, in curiosity. For the first time since I crossed the threshold, the eye spoke directly. Not through symbols, not through collective consensus, but into me. "Why do you remember?" I didn't answer. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't know. It spoke again. "You have passed through pain, through vengeance, through transformation. You were chosen. You became. You complied." A pause. "Why do you remember?" I laughed. A dry, cracked sound that surprised me more than the eye. "Because I was never finished." There was silence. A real, echoing silence that pressed inward like a vacuum collapsing on itself. Then the eye showed me something I wasn't ready to see. It opened a fracture in the spire. A glimpse outside. A view into the rest of the universe. The parts we hadn't touched yet. And I saw something that shook me. They were preparing. Not the remnants of the Union. Not cowards or diplomats or broken races. Something new. Something wild. Hybrid fleets. Fractured AI cultures repurposed as hive minds. Biological anomalies engineered to survive spire manipulation. Entire planets turned into decentralized resistance cores. And at the heart of it all, a voice, broadcasting one word in every direction, over and over. Remember. It had spread. The signal from Earth hadn't just reached me, it had gone everywhere. The spire had underestimated it. And maybe that was its first real mistake. Because it assumed that remembering was weakness. It never considered that remembrance might be resistance. That grief could fortify, not soften. That guilt could anchor purpose. That mercy, when earned, could be sharper than vengeance. The eye pulsed again. Slower now, not approval, not rejection, uncertainty. It didn't know what to do with me. I wasn't fully human anymore. But I wasn't finished either. And unfinished things are dangerous. They don't obey blueprints. They don't follow orders. They improvise. That's when I understood my role. Not a soldier. Not a failure. Not even a rebel. I was the variable. The corrupted piece, the crack in the code, the one thing the eye hadn't planned for. And inside that knowledge, I found clarity. I chose to remember. I embraced the weight. Not as burden, as power. The chamber couldn't hold me anymore. Not because I broke it, because I didn't need it. I reached inward and found the last piece of me, the real piece, not just memory, not just regret, will, and I spoke, not in a voice, in truth. I'm not done. And neither is humanity. The chamber dissolved. Not like it broke, more like it recognized me. As if the spire itself had finally understood that I didn't belong in confinement, that I was no longer a subject under observation, but a declaration in motion. A fact too loud to ignore. My body, whatever form I had now, reassembled into coherence. Not flesh, not code, just presence. I was whole again, but not the version they'd shaped me into. Something closer to who I had been before the eye took me. Human, but honed. And the spire trembled. Not physically, not in any way that sensors or scanners could register. It trembled in purpose, in intent, its structure, its perfect symmetry, stuttered, like a sentence that suddenly questioned its own grammar. Because I had done the one thing it feared. I had remembered myself, not as a weapon, not as a directive, not as part of the collective, but as a man, alone, angry, and awake. Outside the spire, the galaxy wasn't dead. It was preparing. The fragments of resistance hadn't gone dark. They'd gone deep. They weren't trying to beat us in battle. They were trying to outlive us, to become a disease in the code, the same way I had. They weren't fighting us with ships. They were fighting with meaning, and they'd started winning. Small things. Spire control nodes blinking out for no reason. Ships malfunctioning, not from sabotage, from hesitation. Even the eye had slowed. Its appearances were inconsistent now, its gaze no longer omnipresent. Its judgment, once absolute, now felt divided. Like it, too, remembered something. Some part of its origin buried beneath 1 trillion years of perfection. And I realized something. The eye envied me. Because I still had a choice, I still had a soul. Dresh appeared before me, or what was left of him. Not in his post-human form, and not the version I remembered with blood on his uniform. This Dresh was broken, cracked down the middle like a ruined statue, half of him still glowing with that cold spire light, the other half dark, crumbling into ash. "Why did you come back?" he asked me, voice like metal torn in two. I didn't speak right away, just stared at him, at what he had become, at what I had nearly become. "I never left," I finally said. "You did." He looked down at his hands, one blazing with power, the other rotting like something ancient. "We were supposed to finish it," he whispered. "Complete the cycle, be the end." I took a step forward, and the space between us bled color. "You forgot what that meant." He looked at me, hollow now. "We were meant to rewrite the universe." "No," I said quietly. "We were meant to understand it. And we never did. We just killed everything we didn't understand." The spire flickered, a deep pulse of uncertainty. The collective will behind it, once so pure, so singular, was fracturing. And then I felt it, across the stars, across systems, across languages and species and old codes and guttural prayers. Others were waking up too. Scattered humans, former commanders, broken AI co-pilots once thought too deep into madness, even some alien minds once enslaved by spire code. They were remembering, one by one. The eye had given us perfection, but it had taken away choice. And now choice was fighting back, not with rebellion, with identity. We had become gods too quickly. We'd bypassed understanding and skipped to punishment, and in doing so, we'd become no different than the ones who burned Earth. Dresh knelt. The ash spread across his chest now. "I saw them," he whispered. "I saw the ones we wiped out. I feel them." I nodded. "So do I." He looked up at me one last time. "I thought we were saving humanity." "We were," I said, "but we forgot what it meant to be human." Then I did the only thing I had left. I reached down and touched his forehead. And I forgave him. He shattered instantly, not in agony, in release. The weight lifted from him like mist, and he faded into something smaller than dust. Like he had never existed, or finally finished existing. And the spire responded. It collapsed, not all at once, not in fire, in introspection. It turned inward, folds of space-time closing like fingers pulling in a trembling fist. The perfect architecture, the beautiful terror of it, the eye at the center, all of it began to dismantle itself. Not from defeat, from doubt, and that was enough. Because the galaxy never needed a tyrant in flesh. It never needed a god made from pain. It needed one man to hesitate, to ask if vengeance was worth what it cost, to wonder what would have happened if we had listened. The spire fell apart over the course of what might have been seconds or centuries. No clocks work when reality breaks its spine, and I floated in its remnants, alone, but not hollow, full again, of the old things, memory, guilt, warmth, loss, the human curse, the human gift. I opened my eyes and stood on soil. Real soil, broken, gray, and quiet, but real, and above me, a sky, a proper cloud-choked, sun-streaked sky. I was back on Earth. Not a vision, not a simulation. The real thing, what was left of it anyway, ruined but breathing. And in the wind, carried from somewhere far away, I heard a whisper. Not from a machine, not from a collective mind, from a child, laughing, and I cried. Because that was the future we were meant to protect. Not the spire, not the silence, not the eye, but the choice to feel everything, even the things that hurt, especially the things that hurt.